With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Single Muslim Live sponsored by SingleMuslim.com with me, Nazia Khatun. We're here live on Sky 753 and across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube. Wherever you're watching, a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Today's discussion is about marriage and motherhood. The question I was asking you is, what do you think is the key to a successful marriage?
I think, in my opinion, the key to a successful marriage is when two whole people come together, full and whole, and come together to enrich each other's lives. So there isn't this codependency issue here. We're not looking for somebody else to validate us or fill us up in any way. We're coming into this marriage to give to the other person and enrich their life in the process. Because I think that, we're generally in marriage and, when people start getting married, we have this kind of expectation that somebody else is going to come into our life and they're going to bring us all this love and happiness and this fulfillment. And often, we're looking for this Prince Charming that's going to come and save us somehow from all of our problems. But the only person in life that can really save us is ourselves. So I just want to mention the few different, there's codependency basically, and then there's independence, and there's interdependence. Now, in an unhealthy marriage, we have this codependency kind of issue. Basically, we're looking for somebody else to fill us, to validate us, to look after our emotional needs, our happiness needs, our, mentally, psychologically kind of look after us. And in that respect, this can only lead to an unhealthy marriage, because if one person's constantly filling the other partner's cup again and again, it doesn't last very long. It can only last a certain period of time before one couple kind of, has enough and they throw the towel in. So there's the other more healthier way of doing this is to move towards more independence. So where we're looking after our own emotional needs, and I fill my own cup up by having my own hobbies, my own friends, my other relationships in my life as well, and then bringing more to the table rather than looking for that validation to come from one person. So I believe that one person can never fulfill you completely. We are responsible for our own happiness and our own fulfillment and our own good feeling in life. And when you kind of live your life in that kind of way, then you are able to create a better relationship, inshallah.
Masha, I love that because, okay, I want to ask you a question. Can you dissect the word codependency? Because this is a word that is very, very important. And I didn't understand how codependent I was on certain people that made my relationships, even with my parents, actually very toxic. So if you can just take some time just to explain what this word means and maybe give us an example of it as well.
I think let's look at it in this respect, Nazia. When we're first born, we have a very codependent relationship upon our parents because they're looking after us, they're changing us, they're feeding us. Emotionally, when we're feeling sad, they soothe us, they look after us. When we want things, they provide us everything. So in that respect, it's healthy there because it's a mother and a child's relationship. But it comes to a certain point in our life where we need to kind of move away from that thing because as we grow older, there's this whole process of maturity that we all need to go through to realize that this emotional needs, our mental needs, our psychological needs need to be filled by ourselves, really, that there isn't any other person that can come to fill that up because otherwise you've got this kind of dependency on other people. So that now means if I'm in this codependent relationship with my husband, I'm looking for him on the days when he's not, I'm looking at him to fill me up and make me happy. But what about the days when he's not feeling good? What about when he's feeling frustrated, when he's feeling sad? I won't be able to support him. In fact, I'll feel more frustrated and think, why isn't he making me happy now? Why isn't he making me happy? Why am I not feeling joy? Why is this relationship not giving me that good feeling that we're supposed to, quote unquote, have? We all have this expectation that life's supposed to be happy and after you get married, you live happily ever after. But I just want to suggest that, look, life, there is an element of discomfort in life and there's an element of struggle and there is an element of pain in life. And I think these are some of the things that we're often not talking about before marriage, that these are things, a very normal part of life, having pain, struggles and difficulties and, going through life and overcoming them together. But you can only kind of be there and overcome the struggles together by, having this healthy kind of relationship with one another, where we're not now looking for the other person to fill us up. We're looking to give to the other person, and they're giving to us. And in the process of us giving to one another, we're creating a even more beautiful relationship. And this is beyond just pleasure. So it isn't just that we're looking for pleasure and superficial kind of happiness. We're creating something really, really strong together, like a bond of happiness and love, and a real trust in the relationship as well. And I like to talk about the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's relationship with Khadija radiallahu anha, about how when the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was going to Mount Hira to worship in solitude, there was never any resentment about that. But they were worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they'd go away from home for a certain period of time. There was in the seerah, there's nothing to say that there was any resentment about that. Whereas I think in today's society, we've been taught so much through Bollywood and Hollywood and love and romance and all this kind of, the version of love we've been shows us that there are two people that are emotionally dependent upon one another, and it makes good television. It's really nice, if you're watching Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, it's beautiful to watch on television, but does that really serve our life? To have this very narrow version of what love is, does that serve our life? Or does it create more problems, more anxiety, more stress in the marriage?
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying before you came on, it's you learning how to nourish yourself as a person, wholesome, and then you can show up for that person as well. And I think we got it a bit confused and a bit backward in terms of thinking somebody can save us, somebody can show us how to be wholesome. It doesn't work like that. So thank you so much. And another thing I actually want to point out as well, the animal kingdom and the human kingdom is very different. We, as a human species, depend on our parents till the ages of, in other races is 18, 16 or something. In the Asian community, it's like when the daughter's married or certain situations. So that codependency is very, very strong, and the bond is very connected. So we have to always work towards finding our own identity, I guess, as well, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that does start at home, because it's like it's a narration of one of the Prophet's companions, where they said that, look, for 7 years of your life, teach your children to, look after your children and let them play. And for the second, for the next set of 7 years, give them chores and responsibilities. And then the third set of 7 years, kind of make them like your partners, basically, and get them involved in decision making. So that's what when we're raising our children, we're hoping to create children who can, create human beings that can make their own decisions and, decide things for themselves, and kind of be comfortable in who they are in themselves, like our individuality, rather than constantly looking for other things, possessions, relationships, cars, houses, and, what we wear to define who we are. Because they don't define us. We have to have this kind of good relationship with ourselves, this kind of self-understanding, I think it comes from, which I think in this generation we unfortunately don't do much of. There's more focus on external things rather than internal focus.
I'm going to stop you there. We are going to be going on a very, very short break very soon.
Yeah.
And the topic is about marriage and motherhood. And I just wanted to encourage our audience to come and join the discussion, and maybe WhatsApp us on 079-507-97017. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So, but continue. This is a very interesting, relevant topic as well in terms of marriage, because in lockdown, there's a lot of tension that's been going on, and a lot of marriages are probably having trouble in terms of how a husband and the dynamics of a husband and the wife is probably broken down a little bit. And nobody's had the manual, the guideline to actually resurrect that. What advice would you give to a couple who maybe is struggling at the moment or has been throughout the whole lockdown?
I'd say that, it's very easy for us to see what somebody else is doing. We can clearly see what somebody else is doing at times, but we can't kind of a bit more tough to see how we're contributing towards the problem. I mean, oftentimes it can be that, look, maybe, for example, somebody, a husband or wife has raised her voice slightly, but then what's our tone of voice like? How are we feeling at the moment? So self-awareness is so important. We need to be really self-aware about how we're feeling. Where is this frustration, this anger, this resentment? Where is it really coming from? Because I'd say blaming other people is very, very easy. We're always trying to look for somebody else to blame for how we're feeling. But in reality, any emotion, negative emotion or positive emotion, it's all acceptable. There's nothing wrong with experiencing negative emotion. If I'm feeling stressed out, if I'm feeling sad or upset or overwhelmed, that's okay. I need to realize that my frustration and overwhelm is coming from my thoughts, because our thoughts create our feelings. When we think something, there's a signal that goes to our adrenal glands, which releases certain chemicals in our body that make us feel a certain way. So it isn't actually my husband or other family members are making me feel anything. It's actually my own thoughts. Now, the way we interpret every situation is a choice, isn't it? So we can choose how we want to interpret any situation. And I often like to give the example of, think about a rainy day now here for a second. When it's raining outside, we often think the rain is making us miserable, the rain is making us sad, and the rain is making us, feel like we've got low energy. In reality, it isn't actually the rain that makes us feel anything. We're thinking something in particular about the rainy day or the dull day that makes us feel that way. So we can't say that, look, it's our partner that's making us feel that way. We need to kind of take ownership, because any situation or anything in life, there's always a better way of interpreting it. You can always interpret it in a helpful way. You can interpret it in an unhelpful way. You can interpret it in an empowering way. You can interpret it in a disempowering way. It's just all about what thoughts that we attach with. What are we making the situation mean? If somebody is kind of being a little bit quiet, somebody's not opening up to you, husband's a little bit frustrated, we can interpret that and say, look, he's having a bad day. He's stressed out. Maybe there's financial issues, maybe he's not meeting his friends, maybe he's feeling a bit cooped up. And once we can recognise that their behaviour isn't really to do with us, we're able to deal with things differently. So I think self-awareness is so important to know to understand how we feel. Sorry, Nazia.
Nadia, I'm going to have to stop you there. We're going to come back to this question. Great. And please join us. The topic is about motherhood. And welcome back. And we have Nadia Akhtar as our beautiful guest today. And the topic today is about marriage and motherhood. Nadia, I want to come back to this question. We were just discussing about tensions running high in marriages in lockdown. And there were some beautiful things you said about owning your feelings and looking at yourself before we can look at other people for things not to blame on. Please take us through that whole thing again. And you were just coming onto this beautiful thing before we're coming onto our break. What's the advice that you can give to people that are struggling at the moment?
So I think that it's important to develop this kind of self-awareness in ourselves. So once we're aware of our feelings and where those feelings are coming from, we can feel a sense of control in our life, because I believe that we all need a sense of control in our life. And often we are seeking that sense of control by trying to control other people. So I try to control my husband, my children, sister-in-laws, family members, brothers, sisters, parents, right? You can never, ever control anybody else and the way that they're showing up and the way that they're acting and behaving. What we can control in our life is how we show up. We can control our feelings, because our feelings come from our thoughts, and we can control how we show up in the marriage. Now, I honestly believe, Nazia, that just by one person changing the way that they do things can completely transform a marriage. And I've seen this happen again and again with the sisters that I work with. Just by one person doing something differently, you can completely transform a marriage. Now, how it works is that there's this theory in psychology, like emotional reciprocity. When I'm giving out good energy, positive energy, there's no doubt that, people are going to respond. They're giving out a type of energy. And we see this in the Prophet ﷺ's life, where so many people would deal with them in, cruel and show them animosity and be rude and disrespectful. The Prophet ﷺ lived their life based on principles. So if we are these people who are living their lives based on principles, on values, and from a place of knowing who we truly are and showing up in the world in that way, then inshallah we're able to create better results for ourselves. I mean, one of the hadiths that I often talk to sisters about is the example of the woman who used to throw trash at the Prophet ﷺ from her window. I don't know if you've heard that one, Nazia, but for so many times, you know, she kept doing this again and again and again. And the one time that she didn't, the Prophet ﷺ said, where is that lady? And they went and asked about her, and somebody said that she's not well. So they visited her on that day. And, you know, as far as I know, that she, became a Muslim, subhanAllah. So it isn't about always tit for tat. It isn't always about, look, he said this thing to me, I'm going to say this thing back. How are you ever going to be able to create a better result for yourself? And we do create our results ourselves based on the things that we do. We're always creating a result in our life. Either it's a positive result or a negative result. Whether we're aware of it or not, we're always creating a result. And if you want a better result in our life, we have to lead first. Just by me doing things differently in my marriage, with my relationship with siblings, with parents, with, you know, extended family members, you can create a better result, a more positive result. Now, this is a different series between living an autopilot life, kind of like sleepwalking through life, not being very conscious and aware of what we want, and being on autopilot. And basically the way that our brain works is the brain kind of works on efficiency, basically. It's not always paying attention all of the time. So quite a lot of our life is running basically on our habitual patterns. Whenever we do something again and again and again, our brain saves it. It's such a smart system, subhanAllah. The brain saves it and it creates a neural pathway to it. So what it does, it creates an action and a feeling, it links them together. And what happens is very, very easy for us to repeat that pattern again and again and again. It's a bit like when you learn to drive. Once you've learned how to drive and you've drove so many times, you don't have to really pay attention, you're just driving now. So what's happening is that you've even created these patterns in our marriages as well. These habitual kind of patterns where we could even, I mean, every husband and wife, and in many relationships, you'll always have disagreements because we're all so unique and so different. Everybody's got such unique perspectives, and everybody's internal world is so subjective that we will have disagreements. We will have different thought processes, but there's always a healthier way of doing that. We can speak to one another. We can ask each other questions, get to know one another more, and by doing that, we're stretching ourselves. We're growing as individuals ourselves. And we're practicing, like, you know, patience in the process. We're creating beautiful relationships. We're improving our self-image and, you know, the self-belief that we have about ourselves. And we have self-respect for ourselves. And when you do the right thing in life, I believe that, you know, you always benefit yourself first before anybody else. Yeah. So when you create a beautiful relationship with your husband, it's a win-win situation. So not only does he feel good, you feel amazing, and you know, every single day of your life will feel so much more happier.
I love that, because there's so many interesting things, and I love the analogy of the car that you used, because when we understand how amazing the brain is, when you first learn how to drive a car, you're changing your gear, stick, your accelerator, brake, whatever there is down there. I don't drive anymore. And then you have to be aware of the mirror, side mirror. There's so much going on. And then when you become... doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, when you become efficient at driving, everything becomes second nature. And then on top of that, you're listening to music. You're thinking about the food you're going to make, the conversations you're having, and that applied to a relationship is so beautiful. I never thought about that. And we also have this showing up. How are you serving yourself first, and how can you serve your partners? And I think it's those questions, the small things that make it so beautiful, that make it so grand, that make it so euphoric. It's the small touches that probably we forget as well. I wanted to move on to our next question, and that is motherhood. There has been a lot of anxiety around being at home, the pandemic, with lots of mental health issues, especially for mums, even the new mums. I mean, I can't imagine what they're going through with the pandemic, with postnatal hormones running everywhere, and then having to look after a new baby. What advice would you give to mums balancing their home life and actually making enough time for themselves? What are your tips?
I think that in life, if we get conscious and really intentional, we don't make time. Because, you know, if you just get up in the morning and you let the day run you, then you'll never have time. But I think the way to do it is to create time. So we create time for ourselves. We carve time out for whatever it is that we want to do. For example, if you want to study and learn, or if you want to read or you want to exercise, you carve that time out. You say, look, between 12 and 1 o'clock, I am going to do this thing, and then you do it during that time. If you're making a commitment to yourself, we're honouring the commitment that we make to ourselves. We're making a promise to ourselves that I'm going to do this thing, and then we do it. Now, the thing is, if we have these incredibly high kind of standards of perfectionism, and if we're valuing the way everything looks over our well-being and our long-term, goals and how we're going to feel long-term, then of course, we will struggle to carve out this time, because, every single time the children are throwing the toys around, you're feeling the need to clear that up. So you're constantly allowing the day to run you. I believe that if you get very, very conscious and get very intentional about what you want in the long term, and you've got a vision and you know where you're going, and you also realize that, look, how you feel does impact your children, how we feel does impact our marriages, how we feel just impacts the whole ambience in the family, and inshallah, our children's education and our relationships with other people. So you have to make time for your well-being. You have to make time for the things that make you feel good. It is very, very important. But if you're just letting the day run, it's never going to stop. I mean, the way it works, so even the day that, one of the day we leave this world, there will be dishes in the sink, the house will need cleaning. It's never going to stop. But at what expense are you doing that at? We pay such a big price. You want to just have everything looking so perfect that we forget about ourselves in the process. Like, is the way things look more important, or is how we feel more important?
These are some beautiful gems. I'm learning so much from you, honestly. I might have to hire you as a life coach. But there are some beautiful things we never stop to think about. How am I making time for myself? Like, I'm a fitness coach, Nadia, and the first thing I do when I wake up, I do a morning ritual, and exercise is by far the most important thing for me to survive. Like, I drink water, like I need oxygen to survive, like I need food to nourish me. And I hope the people who are following or watching this carve time, create time. There's the same 24 hours that we have. And I get it. Motherhood is difficult. It's difficult just being alive on planet sometimes, right? Yeah. But unless we take responsibility, we cannot create a different kind of outcome. Well, how has motherhood been for you then? Be honest.
Yeah, subhanAllah, I think that in the beginning, as with everything, there's this theory called the hedonic treadmill, Nazia. When you have any kind of change in your life, right? I just want to start off by telling you this, but you have this temporary raise in like how you feel. Like when you get a new car, you're so excited about the new car for 6 months, or when you move house, it feels amazing. Or when I had my first child, my daughter, subhanAllah, I felt like it was amazing. Alhamdulillah, there's nothing like, holding your baby close to you. There's nothing compares with the kind of happiness that it gives you. But what I did soon realize is that I can't completely, that can't just be my only kind of identity, is that I'm a mum. In order to really serve them as mum, and in order to be very happy, and also for their long term, I'm basically a role model for my children. So I need to also find who I am in the process and kind of evolving and growing. I think what I kind of struggled with, to be fair, is this whole process of evolving and growing and changing. Sometimes we often want to hold on to this one version of ourselves. Maybe it's the version that we were in our 20s or early 20s, or by the time we're 25, we think that this is who I am. I think that we need to kind of allow ourselves to evolve a little bit. So maybe I kind of struggled a little bit with, this new role in my life, this new chapter in my life. And as time's gone on, more and more, I've recognized that I don't need to completely attach with one version of myself. As we grow older and older, and as life goes on, there'll be many different versions of us, and to be completely accepting of that, and to allow ourselves to move and change and grow as time goes on. Alhamdulillah, I've really seen motherhood as a learning experience. I've learned so much. And I think it's also made me, be so grateful towards my own parents as well. Like, subhanAllah, it reminds me of like when my dad used to take us to school when we were young. Now I'm doing that. It just makes me realize how fast life's passing by. And subhanAllah, there's highs and lows and good days and bad days. Inevitably, we'll all have bad days. It's more about taking ownership for our feelings. So if I'm not feeling good, that's not the kids. That's me. I take ownership for how I feel. If I'm feeling frustrated or stressed out, it's not them. I need to take responsibility for how I feel and deal with myself and manage my emotions. This is why I think that emotional regulation and understanding emotions and understanding this part of ourselves, which is so important. Like, we've never been taught this at school. We never had anything. They never ever taught, even in person. Did you have PSME lessons when you was in secondary school? They never ever taught us anything about emotional intelligence, about how we need to be kind of in tune with our bodies and our feelings. We were never taught any of this. So I just
Nadia, I'm going to stop you there. We are going to go on a break. We're going to come back and join this beautiful topic again. It's amazing. It's interesting. Make sure you join us in a very short while. And welcome back to a beautiful topic, marriage and motherhood, very relevant to today's current climate. And we are speaking to Nadia Akhtar. Nadia, you spoke about identity. I want to make this last section about this concept of our identity. And you're a very wise human being, and you know, it's a privilege. Like, your children will be very, very privileged to have you as a mother, because you're full of wisdom, you're full of life experience. And this is what I love. It's like the human intelligence and the emotional intelligence of actually owning. And it's about you learning how you are, so then your patterns are now then transferred to your children, who are then going to be living in this world. And the question really was how motherhood has been for you. There's been highs and lows, but you mentioned about finding your own identity. I get this question all the time from my clients. I've lost my identity. Now, let's unravel this. What does it mean to lose your identity as a mom? And how can we regain that identity to become a better mom, maybe?
I think maybe in the beginning, you know, I hear this a lot as well now. People say you need to go and find yourself. You go out in the world and you find yourself. But the way I like to look at it, and the way that I feel as though I'm on this kind of trajectory, I feel that it's a better way to do it is to create yourself. What kind of person do you want to be? You decide first. Mm-hmm. And we say, look, I would like to have these traits. I'd like to be a patient person. I'd like to be able to be more self-aware. I'd like to be more conscious. I'd like to be more of a learner. I'd like to read more. I'd like to exercise more. I'd like to be more loving and giving. So we decide who we want to be first. So have this kind of mental image of who we are, and then we live those things, rather than, you know, wanting to go and find who we are. And I think in that way, what we're saying is that we're kind of lost, but we need to go and find ourselves. I think the other way to do it is to create ourselves. Like, who do we want to be? What kind of things do we want to do? And then we go into those things and do them, and then we kind of. So I feel as though it's good to have like a vision, like what kind of person do you want to be, like. And often the way that I like to look at it is what's really, really helpful is when you look at life backwards. When you're right at the end of your life and you're lying on your deathbed, what would you like to have said that you had achieved in your life? What kind of things do you want other people to say about you? How do you want to like think about your life? And I think when we do it that way, you know, it's so helpful, and it makes so much more sense. I always find that, look, it's like when you're traveling somewhere, you need to know where you're going. What's your destination? Where do you want to go? If we have the most amazing car, most expensive car, and we just don't know where we're going, there's no purpose for that car, is there? You need to kind of know where you're going. So I think starting backwards really, really helps. And that then creates the self. So when we know where we're going, who do we want to be? What do we want to say? What do we want to have achieved in our life? That then completely makes sense, because then we know, how do we need to be living our life then? We need to live our life incongruent with that kind of vision that we have for ourselves. And I think that's the easy way of doing it, rather than, really confusing ourselves. And I think if you're not very sure about who you want to be, Nazia, we start looking at other people. So if somebody else is doing something, or somebody else has something, or someone has certain interests, it's like, oh, I should be doing that. Maybe I should be doing that. Maybe I should be doing that. It has to come from inside ourselves. You can't look at other people and, make them your guiding star. We are our own, our own intuition, our own GPS system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with will guide us, inshallah, and it will show us, which way we need to go and how we need to live our life on a day-to-day. And I think it does start on a day-to-day basis.
There's so many layers to the things that you're speaking about, being congruent, being in alignment with your energy, being, trusting your intuition. And as females, we're very, very much gifted with this sixth sense. The sixth sense is literally our brain keeping us safe, keeping us alert.
Yeah.
And it's being in tune with that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I mean, the next question really is, I mean, generically, what do you think is the most difficult part of being a parent? And how do you think people can overcome the difficulties?
I think that, well, I think the thing is that the difficulty is knowing whether you're doing it right or wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I found that knowing whether what you're doing is correct or whether it isn't correct. And I think that uncertainty in not knowing. But then I think the way that I deal with it is that through prayer and, understanding that ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in charge of all of our affairs, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide our children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is their protector, and ultimately He is, Ar-Rahman, and He is the one who's looking after our children, really. So I think that for me, it's maybe uncertainty, not knowing whether I'm doing something right or wrong. But the way that I deal with that is to put my trust in Allah and really pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask that, to bless my children and give them success, and that inshallah things turn out right. Because I guess these days it's just so difficult. You can get so lost because everybody's ideas of success is completely different. We all want our children to be successful, but then everybody's version of success is so different. And then you're living together in these communities and societies, with social media and everything. It can be quite difficult to often, feel as though I'm not doing this for my child. Am I doing something wrong? Is the way that I'm taking things correct, or is it not correct? But I definitely think that if we base our decisions based on love, and if we've got a good sense of ourselves, inshallah, things will only work out for the best. I think that I always ask myself, is the decision that I'm making, is what I'm doing coming from a place of scarcity? Like, are my intentions coming from a place of scarcity? Like, am I doing this because I'm comparing it with somebody else? Is it because I've looked at something else, I've got a bit of inferiority, or where is this coming from? And I think that we do need to question our intentions and why we do what we do.
And this is the beautiful thing, isn't it? Is questioning our intention to find out what our days want to look like, what kind of relationship we want to be involved in, to actively participate in. Honestly, I can listen to you all day. I'm so glad we managed to get there in the end. Now, this week has been very, very interesting in terms of Facebook, media, social media. Everybody's been going crazy with the Harry and Meghan facade. And the whole thing, I think a lot of South Asian people have been making a lot of comments about, maybe South Asian men need to take a leaf out of Harry's book and, look after his wife. And I have a very delicate question for you now. What advice would you give to somebody who may be receiving criticism from their in-laws about the ways they've been parenting? With Harry and Meghan, it's been very centered around the racism aspect of it, but there has been certain things that they've been saying about the grandson as well. And in our communities, we have a lot of pressure from in-laws. And as a mum, I'm not a mum. I hear it all the time. My sister, a new mum, and everybody, my aunties, my mother getting involved, telling her how to be a good mum, criticizing and all that kind of stuff. What advice would you give to somebody that's new mom or an experienced mom? And how would you handle that kind of situation? Because you don't want to hurt your mother-in-laws or your father-in-laws or your elders. What kind of boundaries are we implementing here?
So the very first thing I would say is that first thing we need to do is work on our own mindset, first of all. So let's just say your mother-in-law is giving you some advice about the child, right? Now, that's a circumstance in our life. On its own, what the mother-in-law is saying has no meaning whatsoever. But what she's saying, she's just saying, okay, you should maybe put the coat on the child when he goes out, or you don't give your child gripe water, or whatever it is they're saying, right? On its own, it has no meaning whatsoever. Now, we create the meaning with our thoughts. What do we make that mean? Like, do we make it mean something negative and disempowering, or do we look at that and think, look, maybe in my mother-in-law's time, the mother-in-laws used to give their daughter-in-laws advice, and that's my mother-in-law's conditioning, and that's what she's seen in her life, and she's grown up, with the elders giving advice. So she's just kind of living based on her own conditioning. Like when you learn to drive a car, it gets saved, doesn't it? In the same way, they've got their own conditioning that's saved in their subconscious. Now, so that's the first thing I'd do. I'd question our own thoughts. If you're having negative thoughts, then why are we thinking kind of negatively, firstly? And secondly, just being open and receptive to other people giving their advice. Maybe they're caring for you, maybe they're quite concerned, maybe they want to help. But we always look at life through our own lens. If we're looking at people thinking that they're having a dig at us or they're being rude and disrespectful towards us, then, you know, of course, we're going to feel kind of resentment towards them. The other person picks up on that. They will pick up that we've got that negative energy towards them. And then from there, you know, of course, there's always this exchange of positive and negative energy, right? If somebody is kind of making rude and disrespectful comments and being not nice to you, even then in that situation, we can politely, in the most kindest, lovingest kind of way, say, look, I really love you, I really appreciate you, but at the moment, I think this is working for me, and inshallah, if I need your advice, I will ask you for more advice. I mean, I just think that there's some things are, you know, we don't just get so offended about everything. If somebody is giving you their advice, that they're wanting to help, then, you know, we don't need to get so offended and worked up over the smallest of things. And the real question to ask is, if you're getting so offended about other people, you know, giving their input or kind of helping or advising, why are we getting so offended by it? Why do we allow these smallest of things to bother us so much? You know, we can have kind of like a indifferent kind of attitude towards it as well. I'm not saying be over the moon about it, but you could say, look, okay, it's all right. They've got their own different mindset. They've got their own different conditioning. Now, even your own siblings are so different to us, aren't they? Even our siblings, we're born and brought up and raised in the same parents, by the same parents in the same household, yet their personalities are so different to us. They've got different perspectives, they've got different ideas, different ways of looking at things. And that's also because they, being different number, like, for example, if I'm like the older one and I've got siblings that are younger than me, their experiences are different. So if their way of thinking can be different to us since we were born and raised in the same house, everybody will have their own different take on things. And I think we need to kind of be open and receptive to the fact that there isn't just one reality in life. There isn't just one way of doing things. There's lots of different ways of doing things, and everybody's got their own way, and we will choose and do things the way that we want. But at the same time, being okay with other people giving us a little bit of feedback. And I think these days, honestly, Nazia, no one gives anybody any advice unless they truly do care. Because, you know, why would somebody like use their time and energy to give you the advice to even say it to you? So that's my humble kind of opinion on that.
Thank you so much. We are actually coming to the end of the show, and there is so much we can actually talk about and continue. Thank you so much to my guest Nadia today. It's been a pleasure to have you on here, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And for everybody who's joined us, thank you so much. And shout out to Abdul and Zakia. We got your message. It's been a pleasure. Please make sure you message us and give us some feedback for next week's show as well. What would you like to hear from us? Message us from 079 507 97017. From me, Nazia Khatun, along with the whole team at British Muslim TV, thank you for joining us, and we shall see you again next week. Assalamu alaikum from me and the team.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.